The British Empire, a legacy of power, profit, and paradox. Dramatic hook. Imagine a world where a small island nation controls almost a quarter of the globe, underpinned by a vast network of trade, military supremacy, and cultural influence. Yet, behind this veneer of glory lies a tale of exploitation, resistance, and moral quandary that challenges our very assumptions of imperialism. What drove this phenomenon, and at what cost to the world? As we unearth the shadows of the British Empire, we not only uncover a riveting historical narrative, but are compelled to confront uncomfortable truths about power dynamics that resonate even today. Setting the stage. To understand the British Empire, we must first delve into its origins, a time when the age of exploration was at its peak, and European nations were eager to stake their claims on far-flung territories. As early as the 16th century, adventurers and traders set sail from England to explore new worlds, driven by an insatiable hunger for resources and wealth. Figures such as Sir Walter Raleigh and Francis Drake emerged, planting the seeds of an empire that would eventually span the globe. However, these early journeys of discovery were deceptively simple. The financial machinery behind the empire relied on a complex system of joint stock companies, such as the East India Company, which allowed investors to pool their resources and mitigate risks. This innovative structure not only fueled the expansion of trade, but also laid the foundation for what would become the ruthless capitalism of the colonial era. This exploration was not free from resistance. Indigenous populations often thwarted the empire's ambitions, leading to conflicts that would shape not only the empire, but also the lives of millions of people across continents. Yet, as we will see, these conflicts set off a chain reaction that ultimately contributed to the empire's rise, causing its leaders to adapt and innovate in ways they hadn't previously imagined. Chronological cause and effect storytelling. Origins. The journey of the British Empire began in the late 16th century, a time characterized by maritime exploration. Through various treaties and military conquests, England carved out a niche in North America, garnering both resources and territory. These early colonies were marked by an intrinsic promise, the hope of new beginnings, trade opportunities, and wealth. But prosperity came at a great cost, often through the displacement and exploitation of native populations. The blend of mercantilism, a theory that emphasized the importance of stockpiling wealth through trade and citizen participation through joint stock ventures, provided the British Empire with the means to grow. This was a double-edged sword, as greed drove the expansion, while also igniting conflicts that would mirror themselves in modern corporate practices. The rise. By the 18th century, the British Empire was on an upward trajectory. The 7 Years' War, 1756-1763, was a pivotal moment, marking Britain's emergence as a global superpower. The victory against France not only increased British territorial holdings in the Americas, the Caribbean, and India, but also established a financial burden, massive war debts that precipitated future tensions with colonists. The seeds of rebellion lay in this soil of indebtedness. As taxation increased and colonial governance tightened, discontent grew. The American colonies revolted, leading to a series of events that would redefine the nature of imperial rule. The stories of figures like George Washington and Benjamin Franklin emerged, presenting a narrative of resistance against tyranny. The American Revolution not only cost the empire territory, but also triggered a re-evaluation of imperial strategy, resulting in reforms that reflected an acknowledgement of the empire's limitations. Breaking point. The 19th century marked both the height and the beginning of the end for the British Empire. The Industrial Revolution transformed Britain into an economic juggernaut, fueling demand for resources from its colonies. The empire's expansion continued, fueled in part by the imperialist ideologies of civilizing missions that paradoxically masked the rampant exploitation intrinsic to colonial governance. However, this era unveiled severe contradictions that would eventually lead to cracks in the empire's facade. Exploitative labor practices, famines, notably in India, and increasing nationalist movements led to significant unrest. The political landscape began to shift, and as colonies yearned for independence, it became increasingly clear that the moral justification for imperial rule was hanging by a thread. Fallout. The fallout from overreach and undervaluing local cultures led to significant upheavals. The two world wars severely weakened Britain's finances and global standing. India gained independence in 1947, igniting a wave of decolonization that decimated British territorial possession. India, the jewel in the crown. India was often referred to as the jewel in the crown of the British Empire, a pivotal showcase of British power and wealth. The narrative surrounding British rule in India involves both grandiosity and tragic consequence. Economic exploitation. The British utilized India's rich resources to fuel their own industrial revolution, extracting raw materials like cotton, tea, and opium. Policies such as the permanent settlement of 1793 entrenched feudal land ownership, leading to the exploitation of farmers and widespread poverty. The Great Famine of Bengal in 1943, which resulted in the deaths of millions, illuminated the callous nature of imperial policies, where profit was prioritized over human life. Cultural legacy. India's rich cultural tapestry was both celebrated and suppressed. The British viewed their culture as superior, leading to efforts to impose Western education and values while disregarding local traditions. Yet, this encounter also fostered a unique syncretism that would emerge in post-colonial literature and movements, with authors such as Rabindranath Tagore and later Salman Rushdie exploring complex identities born out of colonial legacies. Africa, the scramble for land and resources. The scramble for Africa in the late 19th century saw European countries, including Britain, engage in a frenzied race to colonize the continent. The Berlin Conference of 1884 to 1885, where European powers partitioned Africa with little regard for indigenous boundaries, marked the beginning of an era of racial power dynamics that would have a lasting impact. Socio-political disruption. Colonization led to profound disruptions in African societies. Traditional governance structures were dismantled, and ethnic groups that had coexisted were often pitted against each other. The repercussions of this can still be observed today in the continued tribal conflicts and political instability across regions like the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Sudan. Resistance and resilience. Despite the imposition of colonial rule, resistance movements emerged, showcasing the resilience of African peoples. Figures such as Jomo Kenyatta in Kenya and Haile Selassie in Ethiopia played critical roles in organizing resistance against British imperialism, laying the groundwork for eventual independence movements across the continent. Key figures of the British Empire. Understanding the British Empire's trajectory also requires examining the individuals who shaped its course, both critics and proponents. Speakers of virtue and vice. Cecil Rhodes, an embodiment of the imperial spirit. Rhodes was a businessman and politician whose vision of British expansion in Africa was underscored by a belief in racial superiority and economic exploitation. His legacy is complex. Rhodes University and the Rhodes Scholarship continue to spark debate regarding the balance between recognition of educational merit and acknowledgement of imperialism. Mahatma Gandhi, a powerful counterpoint to figures like Rhodes, Gandhi's philosophy of nonviolent resistance became a pivotal force against British rule in India. His movement for independence drew global attention, emphasizing moral dimensions in the struggle against colonialism. As a controversial figure, Churchill's views on the British Empire shaped both policy and public sentiment during his time as Prime Minister. His response to the Bengal famine has been criticized as emblematic of colonial neglect and class prejudice. Modern parallels in economic systems. The economic realities underpinning the British Empire resonate today as we navigate global capitalism. The rich resources siphoned from colonies are reminiscent of current practices where multinational corporations exploit cheaper labor and resources in the global south. Foreign aid and dependency. Modern foreign aid systems can reflect the imperialism of yesteryear. Countries that were once colonies find themselves in a cycle of dependency, echoing colonial economic structures, where the wealth of the global north continues to dominate global trade. Global supply chains. Much like the colonial resource extraction model, current global supply chains often prioritize profits over ethics. Issues such as child labor, unsafe working conditions, and environmental degradation can be traced back to imperial practices of exploitation, making history relevant to contemporary consumerism. The societal implications of a colonial legacy. The British Empire's colonial legacy is not just a historical footnote, but shapes modern societies and global relationships, identity, and nationalism. In Britain, the legacy of the empire is tied to current discussions on national identity, race, and belonging. The rise of nationalist movements across Europe and the proliferation of debates on immigration reveal how imperial histories still influence contemporary societal dynamics. Education and memory. The teaching of imperial history in schools sparks heated debates about the representation of colonized peoples and the narratives shaped by former colonial powers. Activist movements such as Rhodes Must Fall have emerged, calling for a reevaluation of how colonial figures are commemorated in public spaces and curricula. These movements underscore a growing awareness of the need to confront uncomfortable truths about history rather than romanticizing it. Impact on global relations today. The legacy of British imperialism continues to inform international relations and diplomatic dialogues. Nations that were once colonies often engage with former colonizers through complex dynamics that intertwine resentment, economic reliance, and cultural retrieval. Commonwealth relationships. While the Commonwealth is positioned as a voluntary association of former colonies, the power imbalances and historical contexts linger. Discussions around reparations, acknowledgement of cultural artifacts taken during colonial times, and shared responsibility for addressing global issues like climate change highlight the persistent historical ties. Geopolitical strategies. The geopolitical landscape today still reflects the divisions and alliances forged during the imperial period. For instance, China's Belt and Road Initiative has drawn parallels to historical colonial infrastructure projects as nations navigate complex debts reminiscent of colonial-era exploitation. Final thoughts and future directions. As we reflect on the vast narrative arc of the British Empire, it is essential to recognize the lessons that emerge from both its rise and decline. Takeaways revisited. Understanding the past informs the future. The trajectory of the British Empire offers crucial insights into how power dynamics evolve, how wealth is created and distributed, and how societies can resist colonial legacies. Global relationships are often steeped in historical contexts that require nuanced engagement rather than simplistic judgments. Cultural memory shapes identity. How a nation remembers its past shapes its collective identity and moral compass. The active engagement with histories of colonialism can foster deeper understanding and empathy among diverse populations, encouraging reconciliation rather than division. Shared responsibility for justice. Addressing the ongoing inequalities rooted in imperial histories calls for collective action. Nations must confront their colonial pasts transparently, prioritizing social justice both domestically and globally. This requires innovative thinking, collaboration, and a willingness to rethink economic models that perpetuate injustice. A call to action. The remnants of the British Empire are woven into the fabric of our globalized world. As stewards of history and agents of change, it is imperative that we take action, engage in education, advocate for curriculums that reflect a diverse range of perspectives on colonial histories. This will foster a more inclusive understanding of our shared past. Support ethical consumption. As consumers, we have the power to influence corporations and governments by supporting ethical practices that reject exploitation. Stay informed about the origins of products and the labor practices involved in their production. Participate in dialogues. Engage in community and global dialogues surrounding decolonization, reparations, and cultural preservation. Creating spaces for dialogue can help to bridge gaps between past grievances and present realities. Open-ended reflection. As we navigate through a complex world shaped by colonial legacies, we must continuously question, what stories do we choose to tell, and whose voices do we uplift in our retelling? The past is not just a collection of dates and events. It is a living narrative that informs who we are and shapes who we aspire to be. It compels us to strive for a future that honors our shared humanity and takes responsibility for our interconnected histories. In conclusion, the British Empire serves as a cautionary tale about the perils of unchecked power and imperial ambition, while also providing a canvas for understanding contemporary global inequities. As we learn from these narratives, we hold the potential to facilitate change and foster a globally conscious society equipped to tackle the challenges of today and tomorrow.